Namibia is regarded as the 56th least corrupt nation, and Iceland is the 11th least corrupt nation out of 180 countries, according to the 2019 Corruption Perception Index reported by Transparency International. Today on One had an exclusive interview with the investigative journalist from Iceland who exposed the infamous fish rot scandal to discuss his views about the methodology used by Transparency International to determine which are the least and the most corrupt nations in the world.
The fairness of the methods of the Transparency International have often been raised because the method is basically is made from a question list that is put out to people while they are asked if, for example, did you or somebody you know pay bribes in the last year to government officials and etc. I've seen that scholars and people who are better in methodology than me have raised the question whether the question should be, have you suffered from corruption in the last year, instead of have you gained anything from corruption last year, and that would give a better understanding. And I'm sure if the question would be like that, I think that a lot of the my fellow Icelanders would answer the question differently. Yeah, and I think even Transparency International looks at the case of Iceland and Namibia on this year's list in light of the fish rot case as not giving a good and fair view of how things are after the fish rot files, because they even point out in their briefing regarding the last year's list that it's quite ironic to see that a huge corruption case like the fish rot files should have put such mixed results for the country in, whereas the biggest company in Iceland is on one side of the corruption and government officials in Namibia on the other. So even Transparency International points out that the description from the place on the list alone is not fair.
The rankings have been perceived by some experts as being unfair towards African countries, as many corruption scandals on the continent often involve multinational companies that operate in collaboration with corrupt government officials. Today on One also spoke to public policy researcher Graham Hopwood to discuss how such rankings can misrepresent the image of African countries in the eyes of the Western world.
It's bizarre that Iceland is 11th on the Transparency International list as being the 11th cleanest country in the world, and Namibia is 56. And yet you would think it's the other way around, because there's almost like a sense of impunity in Iceland, that these people cannot be touched, that the authorities will not undertake a serious concerted investigation. And at least in Namibia we've done that so far, and action has been taken. So this totally reverses the normal image, that Africa is somehow the dark heart of corruption, and Europe is and the West is relatively clean, because what we see is that where the corruption emanates from is in Europe, and in this particular case, in Iceland's case, they don't seem to be serious about tackling it, and this is a big problem, and we need the Icelandic authorities to also tackle corruption on their side, so that this fish rot is exposed not just from what happened in Namibia, but from what happened in Iceland as well.
The Anti-Corruption Commission also condemned Namibia's latest ranking by the international corruption watchdog, saying that the score was not a true reflection of the reality in Namibia's efforts to fight corruption, noting that European countries are exporters of corruption through bribery and secret deals made in exchange for lucrative business contracts in African countries.